Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another UFC video. What? Where is this coming from? I made a UFC video a while back. I might have made two actually. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure if I made. I made at least one a couple months back. Listen, there have been two events this year that have made me so just amazed with the UFC, and that was 300 and now 308. And what made it so special is that on paper, both of these events were so spectacular and so amazing. It was almost like impossible that they would live up to the hype. But not only did both of these events live up to the hype, I would say personally, I think they both exceeded the hype going into them. Both of these events had massive fights, title fights, and it just delivered on all fronts. So I'm going to talk about UFC 308. I watched it in person at fucking Buffalo Wild Wings with a bunch of friends. Shout out Ian, Brian, Ryan. That's a crazy sequence of names right there. And then Devin. Like that was a really fun time I had. I'm gonna talk about the event, mainly talk about the fights that I saw myself. So let's get straight into it, man. Thank you all for watching. One of the biggest things that I enjoy about UFC and like big events like this specifically is like what it means going forward. Like I like mapping shit out in my head. I like thinking ahead. I like thinking, well, what does this mean moving forward? Like, how does this affect this matchup and this matchup? So it just gets me thinking about a lot of things. So I'm just gonna go through basically every fight that I saw, and I'll talk about maybe some other things in the card. Like I heard the very first fight right here at the bottom right here was like a massive robbery. I didn't see it. I'm not sure, but clear as day, no debate, robbery. So take that for what you will. But after that, got pretty good. The card did not start out too entertaining. A bunch of decisions, as you can see on the prelims. But as we get up here, this shit was funny. I watched this shit illegally. Uh, so Chris Barnett, if you do not know, this is a guy right here. He's a heavyweight. He's about 5'9", 300 pounds. I'm not exaggerating. He is the height of a featherweight. Fighting at heavyweight. He is morbidly obese. It's really not that funny, but he's a fan favorite because for his size and his just ridiculous build, his unachievable build, he is ridiculously athletic. Like he throws like spinning wheel kicks, heel kick. Like he does some crazy shit for a guy of his size. But the unfortunate thing, by the way, I don't know why the fuck his thing is Spain, right? I don't know why the fuck that's whatever. I'm getting distracted here. But with this fight specifically, he had not fought in like 2 years or whatever, so he came back for this fight and he pulled a Brian Ortega. If you don't know what that means, he injured himself during the fucking announcements while they were just chilling in the octagon. This dude, this 5'9", 300-pound dude right here, jumped up hella high, and when he landed, his fucking knee gave or his ankle or something gave. It's not. I'm not laughing at an injury, but when you see a 5'9", 300-pound dude jumping around and injuring himself before the fight even starts, it's kind of sad to be honest. But yeah, obviously he was hurt before the fight even started. This other dude right here finished him in the first round, and dude, they couldn't even stretcher this dude out of the because he was in a lot of pain. They couldn't even stretcher him out because they thought he would have broke the stretcher. So I don't know how they got him out of there, but a really just a weird fucking. This is the first fight I saw, and it was definitely a weird way to start. Next up, I saw this fight. This was a really good fight right here. Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. This is a middleweight fight, and Abus Magomedov. This is a guy I was actually interested in, like going into the fight, because I remember him. The first fight I was aware of him fighting was against Sean Strickland. I believe if we look at his history here, he's an older guy, Russian guy, ends in a V, but he's actually a really good and exciting striker. He's like Shermagomedov in a way, like he's a Russian guy, Muslim guy that ends in a V, his name, but he's not like really a wrestling heavy style here. But if you look at this guy's history at middleweight, look at the guy. He has not had an easy journey, and he's had 5 UFC fights. Look at the guys he's fought. So his first UFC, right? He knocks the guy out immediately. Then he has to fight Sean Strickland, who goes on to be a fucking UFC champion. That's okay for a guy coming into the UFC. You got to fight Sean Strickland. And by the way, he won the first round by a lot of accounts against Sean Strickland. But then his bounce back fight off of Sean Strickland, Cal Barajo, who is a top 5 ranked middleweight now, like it's ridiculous. Like this guy had possibly the toughest 2 fight streak ever for a guy like just entering the UFC. So obviously bouncing back from that, he won a fight recently this year, and then this fight, really good fight. Let me talk about the fight a little bit in itself. He got dropped badly, I believe, in round 2. Round 1 was really entertaining. This guy is known for having like a crazy like not having a gas tank whatsoever. Like he is amazing in the first round, like ridiculously entertaining, but then out of nowhere, like he just completely gasses out and he loses his fights down the stretch. That was not the case here because he actually ended up using the grappling and getting his mission victory over another guy, Bruno Ferreira, who is known for his finishing potential. It was a really good fight. I'll be keeping my eye on both of these guys moving forward. And for the first like real fight I was paying attention to on this card, it definitely delivered. This is where the card really started to pick up, in my opinion, and it did not slow down. After that, we had way to Buffalo Wild Wings. Also, this fight, according to a lot of people, this was like um both of these guys like boosted their stock as a result. I can't speak on it because I did not watch it, but according to everybody, it was like a bloodbath, ridiculous. This guy had like his eye completely swollen shut, and they kept fighting. So shout out to, I think they got a fight of the night bonus as well. So I'm happy for that. Both these guys hopefully get big looks in the future. Moving on to the first fight I watched at Buffalo Wild Wings, Jeff Neal and RDA. This one kind of sad. It's sad for one. So first of all, let's talk about this guy, Rafael dos Anjos. I do not know why he is still fucking fighting. In the By the way, let's talk. Okay, this man right here, RDA, has had like 40, and I'm not exaggerating. We can count them, like 40 fights in the UFC. He's 40 years old, by the way. And now listen, 40 years old, it's not that crazy if we're talking like a heavyweight or even a light heavyweight. 40 years old fighting at welterweight and lightweight is fucking insane. I don't even know how, like, I guess he's like, because listen, this guy's a former champion. This is a UFC Hall of Fame we're talking about. This guy, if we just look at the names on this guy's resume, Jeff Neal, Gamrot, Luque, Fiziev, Moicano, Paul Felder, Leon Edwards, Kevin Lee, Usman, Colby Covington, Robbie Lawler, Tony Ferguson, Alvarez, Cerrone, twice, Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz, Vincent Henderson, Khabib, fucking, like, bro, even back in the day, fucking Gleason Tebow, Clay Guida, like this guy is a UFC legend. Jeremy Stevens, this guy has fought fucking everybody. I mean, this guy was on UFC 91 back in 2008. RDA has been fighting in the UFC for 16 years. Look at the amount of title fights the guy had. He had what, 4 title fights? And after that, he fought what, two more champions, Leon Edwards and Usman. Like this guy has fought everybody at multiple weight classes, multiple title fights, won title fights. Like this guy's a monster, an animal. But I don't know why the fuck he's still fighting. He has one win in the last 2 years, and that was against Brian Barberena. He's just he's just too old, bro. Like this guy's got to retire. And on top of that, I think he tore his ACL. There's been no I haven't seen a confirmation about that. He had a significant knee injury in this fight and not knockout, well, TKO. It looks like from what I saw, he actually dropped RDA with a punch, which what like it dropped RDA, and it looks like that's when his knee gave out. Like it's not a situation where it's like RDA's knee went out non-contact and then Jeff Neal put him away. It looked like Jeff Neal knocked out RDA on the feet, and then as a result of him like going to the ground, his knee gave out. So give credit where it's due to Jeff Neal. On the other hand, this guy's like a top 10 welterweight. I don't know why he's fighting 40-year-old unranked RDA. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But out of respect to RDA, this guy's a fucking legend in the UFC game. He just needs to fucking retire and go into the Hall of Fame. Just think about this though. The guy's had 40 UFC fights and like 4 or 5 title fights. He's probably made like tens of millions of dollars. Maybe maybe that's an exaggeration. I'd be willing to bet the guy's made like around $10 million just straight from his UFC fights. That's not even including like bonuses and all that and endorsements, or whatever. Like this guy is a legend of the game. Just go ahead and retire, brother. What are you still doing here at 40 years old? But that probably was the last fight of his career, if we're being honest here. So shout out to Jeff Neal. Talking about Jeff Neal a little bit. He took a lot of slack. His last 2 fights were Ian Gary and Shavkat. He took a lot of slack for that Ian Gary fight. I saw that one. Really just a disappointing performance from him. So maybe this is a way for him to bounce back and get another crack at the top 10. If we look at the welterweight rankings, actually, because this is the first guy we're talking about who's actually like ranked right here. And look at welterweight right here. He is currently. I'm probably thinking of him fighting like a younger guy. Just giving a shot to them. Like Michael Morales right here at number 12, I could see. I don't really see him fighting up at anybody, maybe like a Gilbert Burns or something like that. But Jeff Neal, he's still around. He's still looking like he could division. I'd like to see him fight a young guy in the rankings if he does lose, it's to the benefit of somebody else. You know what I mean? So maybe Michael Morales for Jeff Neal. Moving up the card though, I think we're starting to get the main card now. Oh, I wasn't. This is crazy. This fight ended so fast. I didn't even really get to pay attention to it. This guy, Ibo Aslan, knocked this dude out against the fence like immediately. Like he pushed him backwards and just unleashed a barrage and got a standing like knockout win over this guy. I've never even heard of both these guys, but at the light heavyweight division, this guy's come in and with a 1 minute knockout. Keep an eye on this guy, Ibo Aslan, finishing out the prelims. I think with a ridiculous knockout. So that was crazy when I was seeing that live. Now getting to the main card though, what a fight this really was a great fight in my opinion. Magomedov versus Arman Petrosian. Like, listen, I was not giving a lot of credit to Petrosian going into this fight. I'm like, I look at his record, I'm like, okay, it's a 9-3 record, a guy in his 30s. Just he didn't really, I was just judging a book by his cover per se. I didn't really know what this guy was good at. This was a very, very good and exciting fight on the feet. Two high level kickboxers going at it, and it was very entertaining. I mean, it really was back and forth. It was looking like, honestly, Petrosian was getting the better of Sharamagomedov until obviously, if you have not seen it, a very, very big candidate for knockout of the year. Not in terms of magnitude, like like Alex Pereira over Roundtree. Alex Pereira, yeah, like Alex Pereira has three knockout of the year contenders this year. Max Holloway over Gaethje. All of those meant more, and all of those were more impactful than this knockout. But just in terms of skill and the amount of like ridiculous shit that took, like this knockout was the craziest of the. I can say that confidently. It was a double spinning back fist KO. I've never seen anything like it. He threw two spinning back fists, and the second one knocked the dude out. It was a walk off too. Did not have to land any follow up shots. And we gotta start talking about this guy as a force in the middleweight division. He's come in now, won his first four fights, won three fights in the last. Look at this. The guy's fought three times in the last 5 months. I mean, like coming up in a couple weeks. So it's like this guy is on a ridiculous pace, and I think it's about time for him to get a ranked matchup here at middleweight. The question is who? Oh, he is ranked number four now, or sorry, number 14. So he became ranked, deservingly so. He became ranked after that matchup. I'm not sure here on short notice. Maybe a Jack Hermanson, a Roman Dolidze. I would love to see him versus Paulo Costa. That would take a little bit more time to build up, obviously. That would be a big time fight. Like that would be a future fight on a pay per view, in my opinion. But him versus Paulo would be like a dream matchup, in my opinion. But Dolidze, Jack, if you're trying to continue to build him, I think Dolidze and a Jack Hermanson matchup would be much more favorable for him, like a lot less risk involved than Apollo Costa. But yeah, Sharamagomedov, man, his potential is looking like it's just climbing and climbing at this point. He is looking like a scary prospect. He called out Izzy. That's not really. Listen, if he wins his next fight, like if he fights again before the end of the year and he wins that one, then we can start talking about Izzy because if Izzy wants to stay active and really remain a threat in the middleweight division, he's going to need to pick up a couple wins. And Izzy looking at Sharamagomedov, that's a pretty favorable matchup for him, I think. So it's not him calling out Adesanya. It might seem crazy, but it's really not that far away from the realm of possibility here. Great knockout, a ridiculous knockout. Everybody was going crazy when we saw that shit live. So that was a ridiculous start to the main card. An amazing card overall. Let's just keep going here. Next up, we got Lerone Murphy, Ige. This is a really good fight here. It was weird though because Dan Ige in the first round, I thought he was going to finish him. Somehow did not end up. He didn't put Murphy away in the first round like I thought he would, and then Murphy continued to go on and win the second round clearly, and then the third round was so close. It was razor close. I believe Ige got a takedown, but I don't know what happened. Ige he landed probably less than 10 strikes in the third round. I don't know why or what. Like I've heard a theory that he got hurt in the first round or something. Because comparing Ige in the first round to the third round, it's like it's not even the same fighter. I don't know what took place or what transpired. Maybe his coaches told him that he was up 2-0 clearly. I hope that's not the case, but maybe his coaches told him that, and he was just trying to coast through the third round because I really don't understand why he was in a position where he was like clearly in control on the ground. He wasn't even throwing ground and pounds. Like he was not throwing anything. He was not doing any damage in the third round. And Murphy simply fought through. They were scrambling back and forth. And at the very end, like the last 15 seconds, Murphy got back to his feet and he landed like two or three significant strikes on the feet. And that was it because those were the only significant strikes in the entire third round. Murphy landed them and he stole the round. So don't get me wrong. It was still a good performance from Lerone Murphy against a ranked opponent. But like Dan Nige, I'm not sure what he was thinking after that first round where he drops him. It looks like he's and then just does really nothing the next two rounds. I'm not really sure what that's about. And you got to feel for Dan Ige. If we take a look at Dan Ige's career, really, he's a guy who is just such a gatekeeper here in this featherweight division. Like he's capable of beating anybody that's below him or unranked in the rankings. But when he has to fight like a top 10 fighter, he just doesn't get any wins. And he's getting older now, 33 years of age. This was like the last time I could see him fighting inside the top 10 back to back. But this is the thing. This guy does not get put away. His last one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I mean, his last nine, he's never been put away. This guy, Dan Ige, has never been finished in his MMA career. That is beyond impressive to me. You cannot put away Dan Ige. He's too tough. He's too strong. But lost to Murphy, lost to Lopez, lost to Bryce Mitchell, Evloev, incapable. He beat Barboza by split decision. That's probably his best career win. That he's just incapable of beating these top level guys in the featherweight division. So it sucks that he's a perennial. What's the word? Like a gatekeeper. He is just the definition of a gatekeeper and the gatekeeper. And then on the flip side of that, you look at Lerone Murphy, who, by the way, I thought Lerone Murphy was a lot younger. I don't know why. Turns out the guy's like 34 years old. Let me pull it up here. He is undefeated though. Lerone Murphy remains undefeated and looking like a guy who really could be climbing up here and getting a shot pretty soon. Not at the title, but I mean, Lerone Murphy definitely deserving of a top 10 opponent here in the featherweight division. Let me pull it up. You can see he's 33 years old. I don't know why. I just thought this guy was like a younger prospect, but not at all really. Same age as Danny Gay. But you can see back-to-back wins here over Dan Ige and Edson Barbosa. Those are impressive. Those are impressive as of late, at least his last three fights, all by decision. In the featherweight rankings, let me scroll up here. I wonder if they've changed them because they changed this for Magomedov. Yeah, you can see here is up to number 11 here. Sterling and Evloev are both busy. He's not getting a fight in the top three, I don't think. Ortega's moving up. Arnold Allen, I would like to see Arnold Allen versus Yair. So what does that? Who does that leave here? We got Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett was just without a fight. I don't know who Josh Emmett is fighting right now. I would like to see a Lerone Murphy versus a Josh Emmett if Emmett has nobody else. I don't know who comes out of that matchup. Honestly, it would be really good fight night main event. I could see it as the main card of a pay per view. I like that a lot. I like that matchup for him because I think he definitely deserves to get a top 10 shot. Calvin Kattar, maybe. I don't know what he is looking at in terms of his career, but I'd like to see Lerone Murphy get a matchup in the top 10. He's undefeated. He is looking like a real threat here in the featherweight division, especially if he can put together another ranked win here. Moving on up the card into the top three. I believe the top three fights, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe there was 6 fights on the main card. Let's see. I can't wait till we get to the top two. That shit's gonna be ridiculous. Because I like talking about the future of the like with the fights, like the fallout. I like talking about the fallout of the fights more so than the fights themselves. What do we have next here? Oh yes, Magomed Ankalaev versus Rakic here. Here's the thing. I've only ever seen this Rakic guy fight twice. This is the first time I've ever seen Ankalaev fight. And here I'll start watching him fight versus Yuri. I watched him fight versus Ankalaev. Rakic feels like a guy to me who is capable. He has everything he needs. He has the skill, the stamina. All that he's lacking is the killer mentality. Like I feel like he has more. He had Yuri hurt bad, I believe, in their fight on UFC 300. I feel like if Rakic was a guy with this just killer mentality or a different mindset, and he was able to put to use these skills, these ridiculous skills that he has, he would just be a much more dangerous guy. But he's just this entire fight, he was on the back foot, and Ankalaev was the one, leading the dance, if you will. Um, and don't get me wrong, this was not a beat down. This was not a brutal, it was a clear decision win for Ankalaev. An impressive win nonetheless, because Rakic obviously is very dangerous. But, Rakic is a guy, he's been in the UFC for a long time. He's been in the UFC for several years now. I feel like if he was a guy who was capable of being a championship level fighter, we would have seen it by now. So, my opinion on Rakic is just he's a good guy, a good fighter, top 10 caliber, but he's not a guy who's capable of hanging with the top five in the division. That's my opinion on Alexander Rakic. Ankalaev, on the other hand, he's a guy, by the way, let's not forget, Ankalaev went to a draw with Jan Blachowicz years ago. This is a guy who could have already been like a UFC champion a while ago. He's coming off a win streak here. He already had a win earlier this year off of Johnny Walker. They rematched that after their weird situation like last year. But he's coming off a win versus a knockout win versus Johnny Walker and a decision win versus Rakic. Ankalaev is the clear number one contender in the light heavyweight division. And unless the UFC has some sort of a plan for Alex to move up to heavyweight, the next fight to make in light heavyweight is Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira. The interesting question, though, because Alex has been so active this year, when do these two fight? Because you have to get Ankalaev to fight before Ramadan. You can't have the entire you can't have any of the fight camp take place during Ramadan. Obviously, that's like a 2 month window that he cannot fight for. As a Muslim, I probably should know when Ramadan is. It's early next year. So if they want to make Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira, you would have to assume it's going to be sometime in either what on either 311 or 312. I don't think going to be on either of those cards. And if that's the case, we're talking about the UFC having to wait till what, May or June? That seems like a really long time for Alex and Ankalaev to sit out. Alex, especially for a guy who's been so active as of late. But if like this is the clear fight to make at heavyweight, so unless they just feed some other guy to Alex, that's like I don't know if Alex is going to want to sit out and wait that long. So it's a really interesting situation because Ankalaev's next fight, like it definitely should be for a title. But the question is, does Alex take somebody else in between that time just because he wants to be the most active fighter in fucking UFC history? That's an interesting question. But as far as Ankalaev's concerned, he is definitely the number one contender right now in the light heavyweight division. Moving on to the top two fights, good. It was great to watch. It was exciting. But watching the walkouts of these two guys, I was like, listen, I'm a type of guy when it's a big fight, I get nervous. I get body pains. I start sweating. Like I could feel the magnitude and the significance of this fight right here. Like watching Whitaker's walkout, he looked mad. I'm gonna try and do an imitation real quick of Whitaker walking the entire way, like he was doing that for like 10 minutes straight, from the walkout to when he got to the octagon to when they were doing the announcements and Bruce Buffer. Like he was doing that shit for 10 minutes. Like I'm like, bro, how mad are you? He was mean mugging for a solid like 12 to 15 minutes, and like all the stuff going into this fight, the first fight getting canceled, like man, and for it to end in the way it did, complete domination on the behalf of Hamzat Chimaev. I have never seen somebody go through the amount of online hate and scrutiny and just the amount of fans he or like they're not fans, they're fickle fans. The amount of believers and hype that Hamzat had in the past, I've never seen somebody silence all. And guys, you I know you if you're a UFC fan, you know you've seen this shit like for the past couple months where it's like, oh, I'm not believing this fight till he actually walks out into the octagon. Oh, who's Whitaker actually fighting? Who's the replacement fighter for this fight? It's like, bro, the amount of shit that Hamzat had to go through, and for him to come through, dominate a top three middleweight in UFC history, it was amazing. And it was so anticlimactic when it actually happened because Whitaker, they were on the feet for about 10 seconds, if that. The first takedown that Hamzat shot, he got it easily. Ragdolled Whitaker, got him against the fence, was putting him into whatever position he wanted. He was going for multiple rear naked chokes, and then eventually, it says victory by rear naked choke. It was not a rear naked choke. It was a face crank. It was over the chin. It was on the jaw of Robert Whitaker, and he broke Robert Whitaker's jaw. Whether you whatever it was, he broke the teeth, the front three teeth of Whitaker caved in. Not even the squeeze was not even locked in. The pressure of Hamzat bringing his forearm around his face before he even locked, he was start. I'm gonna show you when Whitaker tapped. Before he locked, he tapped. Before he even locked in the face crank, the pressure of Hamzat putting his fucking arm around the jaw of Whitaker broke his fucking face. That shit was ridiculous. That shit was actually insane. And we're looking at a situation right now where Hamzat's last two fights have been a win over a top two welterweight ever and Kamaru Usman and a domination of a top three fully prepared middleweight in history and Robert Whitaker. And listen, a lot of people are bummed out for Robert Whitaker because of this fight, and I have to agree. And listen, I'm a fan of Hamzat Chimaev. I wanted Hamzat to win this fight because it just meant more. Like he has more opportunity. Whitaker, he's already a Hall of Famer, right? We've already seen the best he. I understand all that, but we've already seen Robert. His like, listen, I'm not trying to be a dick or nothing, but his time has come and went. Like he has a lot of great wins. He's beat a lot of people. He went to war with Yoel Romero, like Yoel Romero, El Romero, and guys like that. But the downfall of his career, when he faces the best of the best, the generational guys, Adesanya, Dricus Du Plessis, a great champion right now, and now Hamzat, when he faces those guys, he's just not on that level. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Whitaker is absolutely a 9 fight win streak. Then he lost to Izzy, came back with a great set of wins, lost to Izzy again. Like this is a guy who's had to bounce back and claw and fight. But with this loss to Hamza, it really feels like the title dreams of Robert Whitaker are pretty much over, which is sad to say. But if you look at the rankings in middleweight, it looks like the next title shot is going to be Sean Strickland. After that, it's going to be Hamzat Chimaev. That's the next year right there booked up. Whitaker doesn't even have a chance in hell unless something like that. Like, I mean, what do you do if you're Whitaker? You have to fight down if you're Whitaker. You're gonna have to fight one of these upcoming young guys, whether it's Imavov, Calvarajo, maybe Anthony Hernandez. Like you got to fight one of these dangerous young up and coming fighters if you're Whitaker. And I don't know if he wins any of those matchups. To be honest with you, I mean his last two wins, what even though they were impressive, were Paulo Costa and a guy who's not even ranked in Ikram Aleskarov. Let's be honest with ourselves here. When was the last time Whitaker beat a guy in the top 10? I'm just asking the question. It's been years at this point. So I am a fan of Whitaker, but it might be over for him. Like, to be honest with you, and it's sad to say he's a legend, he's a Hall of Famer and all that, but I'm more impressed with just the utter domination of Hamzat Chimaev. He has rebuilt his hype like I've never seen anybody do before in UFC history. He is now, yet again, the most feared fighter in the upper weight classes. He is the boogeyman of the middleweight division after being the boogeyman of the welterweight division. And the question is now, who's going to win between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis so that they can get mauled by Hamzat? Hamzat is not even the champion of his division. He's not even getting the next title fight, and he is the most talked about and the most feared man in the middleweight division. That is ridiculous, and it's deserved because with that type of performance, man, it is, yeah, it's just crazy. It is definitely crazy. Moving up, though, but man, the result is cataclysmic in terms of its impact. Moving on to the main event. In the last UFC video that I made, but this was the fight of the year, in my opinion. This was the fight that I was most excited for of just the year in the UFC. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the UFC and I respect the fact that there's it's a mix of MMA, grappling, and all the aspects of mixed martial arts. I really do. Jiu-jitsu, grappling, wrestling, kickboxing, traditional, all the different aspects. I love it all. But to see the two best boxers in the UFC at the peak of their powers going head to head, it's something that you just can't explain it. Like this fight had a feel to it, an aura, if you will, that was so palpable. You genuinely could feel it in the walkouts, in the stare downs, when Bruce Buffer was announced. Like it, this fight felt different to any fight that I've ever seen before. And to watch it live, it was an insane experience. I mean, it was, but this is the difference. And I picked Ilya Tapuria the entire way to win this fight, just like I picked Hamzat. You can ask anybody around. I had Ilya this entire time, and the reason is this: Max Holloway is a great fighter. He's a legend, but he does not bring power to the table in his arsenal. And listen, I understand this recent run he's been on. He knocked out the Korean Zombie. He knocked out Justin Gaethje. But even in his knockouts, it took him 24 minutes and 59 seconds to knock out Justin Gaethje, and it took him multiple rounds before he can knock out a washed-up old Korean Zombie. And I'm not trying to retroactively go back and diminish those wins. Those are good wins. Those are great moments for Max Holloway. Or you can't compare a Korean Zombie to Ilya Tapuria. You can't even compare a Justin Gaethje to Ilya Tapuria. Now, I picked Justin Gaethje over Max Holloway because I thought that this is what Gaethje was going to do to Max Holloway. Gaethje knocked down Max, but he doesn't have the finishing ability that Ilya has. And man, every exchange here, even though Max, you could definitely make the argument that Max won the first two rounds. I thought it was close. I would have had it 1-1. I don't even know who won which round because it was so close. And even though Max was volume punching, he does what Max does. He stands out at range and he wins the majority of the exchanges. But you could tell from very early on that the one with all the power in these exchanges was Ilya. Even when Max connected and he landed clean, you never felt like he actually had a chance to put away Ilya. And that's the thing. This guy, man, this guy, Ilya Taporia, you cannot hope to strike with him and beat him over 5 rounds. He's just too dangerous. Even if you do think that Max was up 2-0 to this point, and even if you thought he was winning the third round, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is mess up once in one exchange, and Ilya's gonna rock you. He's gonna drop you, and he's gonna put you away. I'm trying to remember what the finishing sequence looked like. I believe he wobbled Max severely. I don't know if he dropped. I don't think he dropped him. I think he wobbled Max severely, got him against the fence, or he backed him up, and then it was a ridiculous hook. I believe it was a left hook because I think he knocked out Volk with the right and he knocked out Max with the left. It was vicious. It was just so ridiculous. The Buffalo Wild Wings was going crazy. I threw my hat. I had a hat on. I threw my hat across the fucking building. I almost hit some poor lady. It was ridiculous. It was a it was one of the most insane knockouts I've ever seen, but I could see it coming. I'm telling you guys, you cannot strike with this guy. I don't care if you are as good a boxer as Max Holloway is. If you're not bringing power to the table, like Volk's not bringing that much power, Max is not bringing that much power. That's why I think a guy like Diego Lopez actually has a chance against Ilya because the way to beat Ilya, I think, is just because he's not a slow starter. He's dangerous throughout, but you have to take advantage of the first round, and you have to beat him in the first round. You have to get him out of there. You can't go the distance. You can't, build yourself up because as you're building, Ilya's building more, and he's getting his reads, and he's charging up these punches, and he's gonna catch you slipping. He's just going to. You cannot last a full 5 rounds with Ilya unless you're controlling like it's unless it's you're turning it into a dirty wrestling match. Like if you're standing on the feet with Ilya, you're gonna get knocked out. Over time, it's just gonna happen. And respect to Max Holloway. Let's talk about the outcomes now. The fight was amazing, lived up to the hype. It was amazing to see. Max Holloway, gracious in defeat. This was probably his last fight ever at featherweight. I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now. Max Holloway, probably the second best featherweight ever as it stands. Ilya is quickly going to take over the featherweight gold status, in my opinion. But Max Holloway, as it stands, it's a 3-way race between Aldo, Volk, and Max Holloway. Max Holloway has he has two head-to-head wins against Aldo. That does it for me. I know Aldo was a great from back in the day, but Max in the new era has more impressive wins in my opinion, especially over Aldo. Um, Max is moving up to lightweight, man. In terms of what I'd like to see from Max, there's a couple options here. I want to see Max legacy fights. And listen, I understand he's not old. He's not at that point in his career where it's like, oh, he's got to get the last couple fight. Like he's not in like the Volk range where it's like, I want to see Volk for this guy and this guy before he retires. Max has a run at lightweight. Let's not get mistaken. Max has a win over Justin Gaethje, who was the number one contender. Let's not get that mistaken. Max is one great win away from a lightweight title shot. Do you guys understand me here? I would not mind seeing Max fight. I want to see Max versus Oliveira. That's the number one fight I want to see. But he is obviously like he's booked for 310, so that's probably not attainable. You look at some other guys. I'd love to see Max versus Dan Hooker. Dustin Poirier called out Max. I don't know why he already has a win over Max Holloway at the light. I don't know why he wants to fight him again, but it would be a great fight. I'd love to see Dustin versus Max, Dan Hooker versus Max. Um, I'd love to see McGregor first. If McGregor decides to come back, Max is a way bigger fight than fucking Michael Chandler. So I'd love those are 3 fights. And honestly, if Max wins against any of he's already you can see he's number 5 at lightweight. Arman obviously is next. Oliveira is after Arman if he beats Michael Chandler or not Michael Chandler. Yeah, if he beats Michael Chandler. Max said he wants to take some time off. He's going to come back in like the middle of next year. If that's the case, bro, he could fight. I mean, bro, he could really fight anybody. I'd love to see Dan Hooker. Michael Chandler would be entertaining. Poirier, McGregor. He has a bunch of interesting and exciting options. I want to see him versus Oliveira, but he has so many interesting opportunities here at lightweight, and I'm interested to see. I'm seeing a lot of people give Max his flowers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's not pretend that this guy's career is over. This guy has a run at lightweight potentially coming up here, so I'm really interested to see. But we're gonna have to wait a long time. But whatever Max's next move is at lightweight, it's going to be very, very interesting. as far as Ilya is concerned, this guy is on a GOAT trajectory. I don't care what anybody says. Since I've been following the UFC, in my opinion, this is the greatest two fight run I've ever seen. He has knocked out, in my opinion, the GOAT and the second best ever in the featherweight division. Knocked them out in a combined 5 rounds. That is insane. Knocked them out, finished them. One with the right hook, one with the left hook. Ilia Topuria is doing everything right. He is on a meteoric rise, and he is absolutely on a GOAT trajectory. I want to see, like, listen, guys, no disrespect to Volkanovski whatsoever, but Volkanovski he's been knocked out cold in back-to-back fights. I don't want to see Ilya versus Volk. I don't understand even listen. Volk is a guy who he's earned the right to an instant rematch. But from the UFC's perspective, there's just nothing exciting about it. Like Volk fought against Max Holloway for what? 75 minutes, 15 rounds, and he couldn't knock him out. And Ilya knocked out Max in 12 minutes? He knocked out Volk in 7 minutes? Where's the hype around that fight? Where's the interest from that fight? If Ilya versus Volk gets booked next week, everybody's going to be talking about, well, time to wrap it up, Volk. This is Volk's retirement fight. Volk's funeral coming up. Like, nobody's actually going to think Volk has a chance in that fight, which is crazy. He's the GOAT of featherweight. But Volk either needs a win before this fight, or I want to see Ilya versus Diego Lopez. Because I actually think Lopez, with his fast, right out the gate, like style, and also his ability to mix in the submissions in the ground game, he would provide a different level of threat to Ilya than guys like Holloway and Volk, like they bring to the table. I actually would be much more hyped for a Lopez matchup than a Volkanovski matchup. And listen, if that means that Volk has to wait and fight like I don't know, like an Arnold Allen or a Yair or like a Diego Lopez or the winner of Evelev and Sterling. If Volk has to wait, I'm not mad at that, man, because I really don't think he's just deserving of the next title shot. I think Diego Lopez coming off his win against Dan Ige at 303 and then 306 against Ortega, like I think Lopez is looking way more like a viable option for the next title fight than Volk is. But even regardless, whoever he fights next, I would not mind at all seeing Ilya get fat like fast track to his pound for pound double champ matchup versus Makachev. My personal rule is I like to see 3 title defenses. I like to see 3 title defenses before I see a guy move up. I like to see a guy clean out his division. In the case of Topuria, after his next fight and he makes it 2 title defenses, he can fast track in my because in terms of what he's done in his production and the way he's done it, I do not mind at all him getting the fast track and getting the Conor McGregor treatment and letting him move up ahead of schedule. Because listen, guys, Ilya Topuria versus Islam Makhachev would possibly be the most exciting, entertaining, impactful fight. I'm mixing my words here. It would possibly be the biggest fight ever in UFC history in terms of the GOAT race. Because Islam, whether you like him or not, I don't know why people don't like him. I think I know why, but it has something to do with his name. But whether you like him or not, this guy, Islam Makhachev, is absolutely on track to be the GOAT in UFC history. He has wins, back-to-back wins over Volkanovski, who's the GOAT of his division, Charles Oliveira, who's top 3 in lightweight history. He just beat Dustin Poirier, who's one of the best lightweights ever. He is on a dominant, historic run. And whoever wins this fight between Islam and Ilya would have a win over the GOAT of either respective division. If Ilya beats Islam, he has a win over the lightweight GOAT. If Islam beats Ilya, he has a win over the top 2 featherweight GOATs. Like this is like a ridiculous. I don't think we've ever seen. Think about what I'm about to say. If we see Islam versus Ilya, we would see the greatest lightweight ever in his prime versus the greatest featherweight ever in his prime. I cannot think off the top of my head. Enlighten me if you know. I cannot think of another matchup ever in UFC history where we've seen the best 2 ever in their respective divisions go against each other in their prime. Let me know if you can think of something like that. but that would be the fight of the decade for me if we got to see that matchup. The UFC, they cannot afford to fumble that. That would be too fucking massive of a fight to miss out on. But man, this video took way longer than I thought it would. But I was so blown away by UFC 308. I felt obligated to come on here and make my first UFC video in a while because that shit was fucking amazing. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.